As avoidant personality and socially anxious types, we can appear to be quite calm and cool and level headed. But that's because we're so disconnected from the internal distress and we're so used to habitually not responding. And we can appear to be quite easygoing and, not getting upset about situations that upset most people. And so it can seem like a virtue, like we're spiritually evolved, that we don't do anger, we're above anger. And yeah, but actually it's a problem, this repressed anger and being so disconnected from anger that you can't even feel it is a big problem. It's not a good thing, and because it means that dominant people can hurt you and say mean and nasty, do nasty things to you, and they can use and abuse you, and they can manipulate you, and they can walk all over you and take you for granted, and you don't do anything about it. You don't assert yourself. You don't put your needs forward. You don't stake your claim. And so it holds you back. It limits you in so many different ways. You'll never really know what you're missing until you actually step into your sense of personal power, and you'll never be able to own your personal power until you cannot feel and express anger. And yeah, so how does it develop? The child learns, is conditioned to this pattern, this situation, that anytime the child responds or reacts or shows any emotion, especially anger, but also sadness and joy, but the child is ridiculed and humiliated and rejected for showing emotion. And so if they get upset or angry, they'll be punished even more. And so this child learns to hide their responses and learns to repress anger and push it away and push it down, so much so that they can't feel it anymore. The other repressed emotion is sadness. And so it's more of a problem for boys and who grow up into men, that we are socialized to not show any sadness. And a boy who does is a sissy or a girly boy. And yeah, so you're supposed to keep your sadness to yourself. And that's not entirely a bad thing. There's a wisdom to these cultural traditions and ways of doing things. It might not be the best thing, but it's something that has worked through the culture, and that's why it's been preserved. And so, there's something about masculinity, the cultural construct of masculinity. You know, like there's some things like boys wear pants and boys play with guns and trucks and cars, and boys wear blue and boys, those kind of things. Um, but when it comes to the emotions, girls are allowed to get upset more and cry and be sad, and it's an aspect of femininity, and boys must hide that, must suppress that, must repress that, and this gives them a kind of a strength. um, I don't want to offend feminists, and because I'm very much a feminist myself, but I also want to be true to these cultural constructs and gender constructs. And so yes, too much of this masculinity and repression of emotions and repression of sadness, too much of it can be toxic. So yes, toxic masculinity is a thing. but too little of it also is a problem. And like traditionally, going all the way back to the primate and ape and early human cultures, the males were in this dominance hierarchy and competing with each other for position, for rank in the social structure. And any show of weakness and vulnerability and emotionality is a problem, so you have to leverage your power, your strength, and um, yeah, so women and girls aren't involved in that masculine dominance hierarchy, and so the emotional and social makeup is very different. But yet, um, the key lens is not the gender lens; it's the attachment lens and the emotional schema. So, by understanding whether you have a resistant style or you have an avoidant style, then you know which emotions are being repressed and which ones are in excess. So the resistant style has excessive pride and anger and repressed shame and guilt. And the opposite of it is the avoidant style, or the socially anxious child, who has excessive fear, shame, and guilt, and repressed anger and pride and sadness. So, repressed sadness, um, it has to be handled very delicately. And repressed anger as well must be handled delicately. I mean, we'll talk later about how to unrepress anger and each of the emotions. But sadness has a value to it, so men who cannot show that they're disappointed or that they're sad and cannot be vulnerable with someone that they trust and cannot even cry in front of another person, um, will never be able to reach out for support and help and comfort and soothing. And so, this avoidant, socially anxious child who's already feeling so alone and bottled up with their emotions has no way to reach out and to ask for support and help, because this emotion of sadness and this ability to cry is also on lockdown. And so the child can't elicit sympathy and empathy, and so people don't know what's happening internally with this child because the child won't show it and can't show it.